Alright, since its release, I've been getting a lot of questions about Daydreamer, so I thought I'd sit down and tell you about it. Around 10 or so years ago, I was offered the opportunity to go and perform in some theatres and then on some luxury cruise ships around the world. And I thought, to do that, I need to have a really theatrical, really amazing piece of mentalism that would really encapsulate and really define what mentalism is. And I used the platform, the fact that I had to perform on stage in front of people every night in a theatrical context, as my stimulus, as the starting point for coming up with what I wanted to do was put together what is mentalism, what is it to me. And when I was thinking about what would happen if I was really reading people's minds, really reaching into people's minds, influencing them or reading them before they said certain things, what would that look like? And I came up with this vision of somebody sat down in a chair with their eyes closed, imagining things, and I would ask them to focus on particular elements of the scene they're imagining, and then I'd write them down, and the audience would see the things I'd written down only moments before, and then have the person call out what they were thinking of, and they would match. This is something I've seen a couple of other people do, namely Darren Brown, and before him, his idea came from the fantastic Kenton Nepper with both of their works. But I had a few problems with those routines. You see, I didn't like the idea that I would come in with a pile of cards which had apparently stimulus. These pile of cards had words or springboards for people to come up with words and come up with ideas from. I didn't like the idea that I brought those to the party. I also didn't like the idea that every single revelation along the way just got stranger or just was basically linear. It was kind of the same thing, even though the information was kind of more interesting along the way it was revealed was sort of the same thing over and over again. And if you know anything about my work, I like to make sure that the revelations are actually building one on top of the other, right? And I also like to have it so there is an element of surprise, a severe surprise at the end of the routine, where something that you take for granted, something that otherwise would never happen, happens. And this results in one of the most interesting theatrical moments I've ever created in any of my shows ever, where everything goes horribly, horribly wrong. And this is not a moment where like the magician gets it wrong or magician in trouble. It's genuinely everything goes wrong. You appear to lose complete control over everything that's going on. And then just when you're at your darkest moment, standing there living in a theatrical hell in front of a real live audience, suddenly you realize that it's not wrong, that everyone's just been looking at this whole thing completely wrong. And it's the perception that's been wrong the entire time. Daydreamer is that routine. Daydreamer is the single piece that I created because I wanted everybody to leave defining mind reading as that routine. So when they see me after the show, it's the one thing they talk about, and it is. Pretty much nothing else in my show gets talked about apart from Daydreamer, and you'll see why. I've purposely positioned this as a piece that's only for serious performers. This is not the kind of thing, because of its absolute simplicity in method, it's not revolutionary in method at all. This is something you're very familiar with. But it's the theatrical framing, it's the revelations that make this such a powerful, powerful piece of mentalism that you can perform for groups of quite small groups of just a few, 10, 20 people, all the way up to now I've performed it for groups of a few thousand, and anything in between. And what's nice is you can customize each phase of the routine to fit your group and fit your audience, which has a massive deepening effect on the connection you have with the group that you're performing for. And also in a commercial sense, it allows you to be positioned as a much more professional, almost like a speaker in the mentalism world. So Daydreamer literally is my definition of what mentalism looks like. And for everybody who's seen it already, whether you've seen me performing it over the past 10 or so years, or you've already got a hold of this beautiful piece of work, then you know what I'm talking about when I say this is a defining piece that really changes everything and takes the audience on a real journey of emotion that they genuinely never forget.